They never thought you'd leave. No, they thought you'd stay broken, crawling, bleeding, begging for crumbs of validation from the same hand that crushed your soul. But they didn't realize you weren't built to break permanently. You were built to survive the fire and become it. At first, they acted like they didn't care. They painted your absence as a joke, posted smiling pictures, laughed a little louder, moved on a little faster, or so it seemed. But it was all smoke, all illusion, because underneath that facade, they were already choking on the silence you left behind. The narcissist doesn't feel regret like normal people do. They don't grieve your soul, they grieve their control over it. When you were around, you made them feel like a god. Your love was an endless mirror reflecting their fantasy self. You filled their hollow with devotion. You forgave their cruelty. You excused their inconsistency. You made their chaos feel like home. But the moment you woke up from the illusion, the moment you stopped reacting, everything changed. You see, a narcissist doesn't fear losing love. They fear losing supply. They fear losing attention. They fear losing the ability to manipulate your emotions at will. And when you cut off the access, when you go silent, when you go cold, they spiral. Oh, they won't show it. Not immediately. They'll pretend they're unbothered. They'll flaunt their new victim, their next pawn. They'll make you think they've upgraded. But here's the truth. That upgrade is just another distraction. Another soul they'll drain. Another mask to hide behind. Because deep inside they know there's no one else like you. And that's the beginning of their regret. They remember everything, every kind word, every time you held them when they didn't deserve it. Every tear you wiped from their face, even though they caused yours. Every time you picked up the pieces of their mess and tried to love them whole. They remember how you listened when the world didn't, how you gave when you were empty, how you stayed when you should have run. And the moment they realize you're never coming back, the regret kicks in like a drug withdrawal, cold, painful, violent. But here's what makes it worse for them. You didn't just walk away. You leveled up. You evolved. You transformed that pain into power. You built boundaries like armor. You smiled again, not because you forgot them, but because you found yourself. You no longer live in their shadow. You shine in spite of it. You don't hate them. You've outgrown them. And that kind of evolution, that haunts a narcissist forever. Because to a narcissist, your strength is an insult. Your healing is betrayal. Your silence is deafening. They can't stand the fact that you're no longer controllable, that your worth is no longer dependent on their attention, that your identity is no longer defined by their presence. They stalk your glow from the dark, checking your stories, reading between the lines of your posts, trying to decipher who you've become and why they're no longer a part of it. They'll try to come back. Oh, they always do. Disguised as remorse, dressed in the language of change. But you've learned now, you don't feed the parasite twice. You don't reopen a wound just because it says it misses you. You don't put out a wildfire just to keep someone else warm. Their regret? It's real, but it's too late. Because you're no longer the same person they walked over. You've become unrecognizable in the best way. You walk with fire in your veins. You love yourself harder than they ever could. You don't need closure, because you are the closure. You don't need apologies, because your silence is the final word. And that silence, it echoes louder than every scream they ever ignored. Now they sit in rooms they once polluted with arrogance. Now they look in mirrors and see nothing but a hollow reflection, because you were the only real thing in their fake world. They feel your absence like a storm, not all at once, but piece by piece, a slow unraveling of everything they thought they had control over. They remember the smell of your loyalty, the sound of your laughter, the warmth of your soul. And they realize they didn't just lose a person, they lost a protector, a healer, a warrior, and nothing they find will compare. Because you were authentic in a world they pretended to understand. You were light in their darkness, peace in their chaos. And when you left, they weren't just abandoned, they were exposed for the shallow, manipulative, emotionless shell they are. Exposed to themselves, and that kind of self-awareness, it doesn't heal, it rots. So let them regret, let them suffer in the silence they forced on you. Let them choke on the memories they tried to bury. Let them revisit the moment they discarded you like you were disposable. Because now they know you weren't disposable. You were a once-in-a-lifetime force, the kind of soul they'll never encounter again. And while they're stuck in an endless cycle of self-deception, you're rising, transcending, thriving, not out of revenge, not out of hate, but because you finally realized you were never the problem. You were the lesson, and they failed the test. So when they look back, when they lie awake at night replaying your last words, when they scroll through old messages hoping to feel something, they'll be left with only one bitter truth. They lost you, and in losing you, they lost the best part of themselves. Let their regret drown them. Let it whisper your name in every moment of silence. Let it haunt them with the ghost of your greatness. Because some souls are not meant to be reclaimed. They're meant to rise, alone, untouchable, unforgiving, unapologetically reborn. That's what shakes them to their core. Not your silence, not your disappearance, but the fact that you didn't just survive them. You transcended them. They expected you to fall apart, to drown in heartbreak, to beg for their attention again, like a lost dog chasing a ghost. But instead, you became everything they tried to convince you you'd never be. You see, narcissists live for repetition. They count on your patterns. They play with your trauma. They twist your empathy like a blade and smile when it bleeds you dry. But this time, you rewrote the script. You broke the cycle. You flipped the game board and walked away from the table they rigged. And now, they sit alone, in silence, in confusion, in regret, but not the kind you think. Their regret is not rooted in love. It's rooted in loss of control, loss of power, loss of access to your soul, which they once fed on like a parasite. It's funny, isn't it? You were once the one asking, "What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Why can't they love me the way I love them?" And now, they're the ones asking the questions, staring at their reflection, haunted by the person they'll never be. You. Because the truth is, you were always too deep for them, too raw, too real. And people who live behind masks can't stand being around someone who sees everything. You saw the cracks in their armor. You saw the insecurity behind the arrogance. You saw the lonely little child hiding behind the ego. And you still loved them. And that terrifies them. Because if someone could love the real them and still leave, then what does that say? It says they are unworthy. It says they blew it. It says they'll never find another you. And deep down, they know it. So they play it cool. They won't message you. Not yet. They'll wait. Until the next person stops entertaining their delusions. Until the next victim builds resistance. Until the fake supply runs dry and the high fades. And then they'll come crawling back. "Hey, I've been thinking about you. I miss us. I finally see what I did wrong." They'll say all the right words, but the energy will still be hollow. Because you've learned to hear intent, not just language. And now, their words feel like plastic, smooth but fake. No depth, no soul. They'll try nostalgia. Try to remind you of the good times. But you've sharpened your memory. And now, when you look back, you don't just see the smiles, you see the lies behind them. The gaslighting, the manipulation, the emotional starvation disguised as tough love. And it clicks. They never loved you. They loved your usefulness. They loved how you made them feel about themselves. They loved the mirror you held up, but hated the truth it showed. So you closed the door, without a word, without a scene, without any desire for revenge. Because the real revenge is this: you healed, and they didn't. You grew, and they're still stuck in the same toxic loops. You became unreachable, not because you blocked them, but because you outgrew the dimension they live in. And now, they're obsessed with your shadow, not your presence. They can't handle that. But your absence, it eats them alive. They stalk silently. Every move you make, they watch. They pretend they don't care. But their ego is burning, because the person they discarded is now the person they can never touch again. They remember your patience, your loyalty, how you stayed even when they gave you every reason to walk. And now they wonder, how could they be so blind? But regret is useless when it's too late. With wounds that breathe wisdom, with eyes that no longer seek validation, only truth. You become the version of yourself they tried to destroy. And one day, they'll whisper your name in a moment of weakness. Alone, shaking, empty, and you won't hear it. Because you'll be too far gone, not just in distance, but in evolution.